now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other 2 books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online booksellers everywhere today. I'm always interested in trying to help out a independent comic creator because I believe that independent comic creators are the future of the comic book business. And there's a lot of great comics out here on platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo by truly talented creators. Unfortunately, this isn't one of them. Now, I bought this Plan 59 from Outer Space comic hoping for a fun homage on the classic Ed Wood movie Plan 9 from Outer Space. And what I got in this comic was a very weak story and some very difficult to look at art. Now, this book really again needed some editing as related to the story, and it really needed an artist who would go out here and put together some sort of dynamic pictures. That's what this comic really needed. And the art is one of the big problems with this comic, and it's a major, real serious issue. Now, the art in this comic isn't very dynamic at all. The compositions of the figures in this comic are really stiff, and that's one of the big problems with Plan 59 from Outer Space is while the story is just a little on the weak side, it's made even worse by the really stiff art in this book, which really looks like 3D models that the artist went out here and copied from. Because when I look at the compositions of the figures in this comic, they really come across as extremely stiff and very mannequin-like, and it makes it very hard to really get into this story. Now, that's one of the big problems with Plan 59 from Outer Space is the very, very stiff and rigid compositions of the figures. The other big problem with Plan 59 from Outer Space is the story. The story in and of itself is trying to pay homage to Ed Wood's classic Plan 9 from Outer Space, but I don't really think that they actually watched that movie, which is considered one of the worst movies in history. I don't really think they caught on to what made Plan 9 from Outer Space really work. And what made it really work was the fact that even though Ed Wood did not have much experience at filmmaking, and he did not have much experience as related to being a screenwriter, he had a lot of passion and heart for his stories, and he really cared when he went out here and put together his films. And it's that heart and care that made Ed Wood's films last all these years as a fan favorite, even though they are some of the worst films out here. But when I look at your Plan 59 from Outer Space, which is supposed to be building on the other 50 plans to take over the Earth, as related to Ed Wood's premise of Plan 9 from Outer Space, this whole comic really it doesn't work for me. The storytelling just isn't there. And again, the artwork is a huge problem on this comic. I mean, on some of these pages, again, the images, they again are really, really stiff, and the compositions of the figures are a huge problem. I mean, this is a very big problem with this book that keeps you from getting into the action, because everything the characters feel so robotic, and they just don't really feel dynamic at all. And that's a big problem when you're going out here talking about doing a comic. You really want your compositions to come across as really expressive and capturing emotion, because when you have compositions of figures, you want the facial expressions and the body language to convey what's going on in the story, so that even if there's no letters on the page, you see what's going on, and that's what draws you into the book. But it's just, this book doesn't really draw you in. It's a book that somebody probably had a great idea on, and they managed to get it out here. But it's clear that this comic wasn't ready for prime time, and it's an example of what happens when you go too fast to go get a book to the marketplace. Because sometimes it's best to just be patient and wait and find a quality artist to do your comic, because that artist can make the difference between somebody picking up the next issue of your book and somebody walking away from the series altogether. Now, this book was these creators' first chance at a first impression, and I wasn't really impressed with what I read in Plan 59 from Outer Space. I was not really impressed with the artwork, and I was not impressed with the storytelling. I expected better from independent comic creators, and this book really just did not meet my expectations for the basic quality of a decent comic. And it's really sad that this book didn't really meet that high standard that I usually set for when I go out here to buy independent comics, because over the last couple of years, independent comic creators have been knocking it out of the park as related to creating really great comics. Unfortunately, this comic wasn't one of them. The creative team on this book, I believe they really need to really go out here and rework their premise a little bit, and they definitely need to go out here and hire a brand new artist, because the artists that they got, they really don't have good sense of composition and body language, and they rely too much on 3D models. And because they rely so much on 3D models, this is what leads to much of the compositions in their panels being extremely stiff and feeling like mannequins and robots. You really don't want your figures in a comic to feel like mannequins and robots. You want them to be very bold, you want them to be very dynamic, and you really want them to pop, because if the figures in your comic go out here and pop, then you're going to have a better chance of selling that next issue. And this first issue does not do a good job of selling the second issue. And this is supposed to be a series, but this is going to be the last book for me, because this Plan 59 from Outer Space, it doesn't seem like they did a lot of planning as related to putting this book together. And if they did a little bit more planning on Plan 59, we might have people coming back for the next issue. Now, if you want to pick up my first comic, Esteem No Good Deed, you can find it on Kindle for 99 cents. And if you want to pick up some of the books on the SJS Direct imprint that are action-packed African-American fantasy, like the ISIS series, the Esteem series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find all of those books in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com, and you can also find them on other digital retailers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, ISIS, Bride of Dracula, Goddess Next Door, and John Haynes team up to take on the Dark Vampire in this action-packed ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, Bride of Dracula in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today.